Oh na 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 na. Bam bam. Oh na 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 na. Bam bam. Oh na 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 na. Bam bam. Oh na 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 na. Big it up. Oh na 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 na. Big it up. Oh na 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 na. Bam bam. Bir bam bam bir bam bir de. Bir bam bam. Bir bam bir de. Bir bam bam bir bam bam bir bam bir de. Bir bam bam. Bir bam bir bam 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 bam. Bir bam bir de. Bir bam bam.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to Home and Away Jamaica, where we connect Jamaica and the diaspora. I'm your host for today's program, Robert Taylor, and I'll add attorney at law. With me today is Mr. Michael Diamond, CEO of Consumer Intervention of Jamaica. Good day, Michael.
Good day. How you doing?
Very good. So we're here to discuss clearing credit history. Clean credit history, clearing and avoiding bad debt. The Credit Bureau in Jamaica was introduced by the Credit Reporting Act in 2010. And
Yes.
for many of our viewers and listeners in North America and the UK, there's more familiarity with credit bureaus and credit scoring in accessing credit. In Jamaica, it's new. I would imagine for that reason, many of our consumers are not aware of the need for clean credit, as well as there may be issues in reporting accurate credit. So what I want to do, Mr. Diamond, is have you just explain your role, Consumers Intervention of Jamaica, what you do as a consumer gauge, and your role in this new spectrum.
Well, for us at Consumers Intervention of Jamaica, it is, first of all, the introduction of the Credit Reporting Act in Jamaica in 2010 was an absolute necessity, given where we're going as a developing region. And in order for us to basically be on a more global scale for credibility, where financial products and financial transactions are concerned, it was very important that we develop that mechanism, whereas we can be able to measure and leverage risk a little bit more for individuals to build and develop wealth. Now, just like anything that's new, there are going to be some challenges. And oftentimes the challenges come from individuals being underinformed, and there's not always going to be 100% compliance with what is required, because oftentimes even the credit bureaus or even the suppliers of the credit information are unaware of some of their responsibilities and duties. So oftentimes it falls back on the consumer. They become aggrieved, and they need an unbiased voice, or they need individuals that can actually advocate on their behalf, especially those more knowledgeable regarding the act.
Can you explain, so that our viewers and listeners have complete context, that how are these scores generated by the Credit Bureau?
Well, for instance, in the beginning, there wasn't necessarily a template for the credit bureaus to use in generating a particular credit score. Unlike developed markets, especially in the United States, where they have a particular algorithm and they're using certain factors that contribute from many different sources. In Jamaica, it becomes a little bit more unique because of our whole dynamic makeup here. And what has happened is each individual credit bureau, and I must say that we do have 3 approved licensed credit bureaus in Jamaica, and they each have their own proprietary means of developing a score that they would use for their subscribers. And this can contribute from everything for, the type of trade lines that you have established and how you have conducted your financial management in the past. In Jamaica, that financial sector is quite limited. We don't have a lot of financial institutions as we have in North America, whereas you will have many different types of financial and credit products. So it is quite limited in that regard. But there are other aspects of conducting business that individuals are able to use to identify a reasonably enough credit score to measure their credit worthiness. So it has a lot to do with your established bank accounts, your investments, especially insurance investments, and also whatever type of credit union that you might be a member with that have certain type of compulsory saving products that can demonstrate, some type of trade line where you have managed your finances over a period of time.
So am I to understand that these institutions that a consumer may maintain credit with, credit lines or a credit relationship, will report into the credit system your credit history and credit temperament, so to speak.
Yes, they do. And it wasn't a 100% uptake in the beginning because a lot of them didn't understand it. Yet, in more recent times, individuals now have signed on and they have made their public notice that they will begin to submit consumer information to the credit bureaus. So now individuals actually can use those histories to demonstrate that yes, they've established a very good trade line, they've conducted them, they have financial relationships that would make them somewhat credit worthy. And this is where some of the problems develop because many times informations are being reported that are not necessarily accurate. So it creates a issue where they're reporting everything. Sometimes they're reporting that information late, inaccurate, and oftentimes these are issues that cause the consumer, once they get a credit report, to seek our intervention because it's not something that is easily remedied unless you know exactly what it is that, what are the proper channels to take in order to get that resolved.
So if a consumer has an issue, there has been a mistake on their report and ultimately with their scoring, what can they expect if they call in to Consumers Intervention of Jamaica?
The good thing is that the act itself speaks to a particular remedy where a consumer believes that information is inaccurate, and their first step is to bring that to the attention of the credit bureau. So once they receive their report, they are able to do a dispute form, which will dispute that particular item, and then there's a time frame for which that information should be investigated and returned to that consumer. In the event that is not returned on time and is not corrected, and the consumer believes that they are not satisfied with the results, they can also take up an issue with the authority, which would be the Bank of Jamaica. Now, many consumers don't know this process. If the Bank of Jamaica intervenes and they're still not satisfied, that's usually when they get in touch with us.
And at that stage,
right at that stage, what we actually do at that stage is that we go directly to what the law says. And the fact is that the Consumer Protection Act doesn't address the credit bureau situations directly, yet still it is viewed as a provider and the consumer that gives us that opportunity for redress because that consumer now is being injured or damaged or violated because of this service. Because usually you'll receive one free credit report, but in instances after that, you'll have to pay for it. So this is something you actually paid for. So the fact that you paid for it, it does give you a certain right as a consumer that can pursue this in conjunction with the Credit Reporting Act, and also, underscored by the Consumer Protection Act, that we're able to address this. Because again, the fact that the supplier has provided information that is inaccurate and it is causing injury, that is something that we continue to push for the Bank of Jamaica to give consumers those individual right of action to address this. Because right now, currently, as the law is constructed, there's no individual right for a consumer to actually level charges against the supplier of information.
Given the potential injury and harm that an inaccurate and perhaps, in the pursuit of amending this score, someone, let's say, applying for a mortgage, this can substantially interfere with the mortgage process. It can also affect perhaps rates. Would you suggest that persons at least annually, and maybe you can recommend a period, pull their own credit report to see what the status of their score is?
Absolutely, because we are in a digital age and everything is now digitized. And one of the first exposure that we're going to have with any financial institution will be our digital profile, which constitutes our credit profile. And it is important for individuals to check on this on a regular basis, especially the fact that we are given a free credit report annually. Now, you don't have to wait an entire 12 months to check to see what's on your credit report, especially if you're involved in financial transactions, or you're planning on buying a house or any large purchases that may have some type of hire purchase agreement, I would recommend at least every 3 or even twice a year that you're going to make sure that your credit report is reflecting accurately what you've been involved in. Because oftentimes, for example, if someone has arranged that their payments to a particular transaction is directly taken from their bank account, and if that bank or that employer was late in sending over the payment,
Yes.
that can be reflected on your credit report. And unfortunately, you won't notice until it has reached a stage where you're being denied credit and you found out that you've had several late payments in the past. So it's important, if we're able to catch that early, then we can go ahead and seek remedy. So I would definitely recommend that individuals take that opportunity to do frequent checks on their credit profile to make sure that what is there is accurate, and to make sure that sometimes your information may not be getting sent over in a timely fashion, which is favorable to you. You also want to make sure that happens, because you can speak to that provider and request that they go ahead and put that favorable information on your credit report.
No, absolutely. And, even more closer to home for me, just an annual fee due on a credit card that you may not be using. You may not be aware that this annual fee has been posted. And so it's
Exactly.
absolutely critical to have your credit report checked. Now, is there a particular range of score that person should be looking for that can give some indication as to whether they have a good score or a bad score?
Well, the it's very discretionary in North America. Well, it's very discretionary in America, whereas credit scores, and it depends on the type of transaction that you're getting into. Mortgages might be a little bit more discretionary. When it comes onto automobile, it's a little different because we're talking about shorter term transaction versus a transaction over a 30-year period. So when it comes down to looking for a good score, normally they'll say very average, 650 score. It's reasonably enough for you to probably get a decent rate with a mortgage and definitely get an automobile. Anything above 750, that is good credit. Very good credit would be any score that's over 850. Is it possible to achieve 850? Yes. Now, it should be reminded that a credit score is not a true reflection of your discipline to manage your finances, because based on you paying on a regular basis, you may only have one trade line. So having one credit card that gives you a score of 850 doesn't mean that you're going to be someone qualified for a mortgage. So it's very important to know that, not to confuse credit scores, because credit bureaus and financial institutions, they do very well with looking beyond the score to make sure that you're an individual that can actually benefit from a particular product, and not simply say we automatically qualify you because you have a score of 850.
Any recommendation for someone who, having reviewed their score, reviewed their report, they have a low score, and for some reason or another, the report is accurate, and the report may reflect, lack of knowledge, not quite being clear that this credit, the bearing that credit reporting now has in the credit cycle in Jamaica. What would be some of your recommendations to that person to increase their score? What steps could persons take to enhance their score?
Well, definitely that first step would be to speak to your creditor. Oftentimes, going in and having that discussion regarding what your plans are, what your future plans are, your short-term goals, your long-term goals, and to find out whether or not there is some type of payment arrangement, even an additional sum payment towards a principal that you might owe, that can basically persuade that particular institution or that particular provider to then begin to give you a more favorable rating. Ratings apply not just for the credit bureau, but also for them internally as well. So when they have a customer that demonstrates that they're dedicated into structuring their finances in a very timely and long-term manner, then they will work with you. They may have other products that you may be able to get into that gives a better reflection on your credit report. So it's important to speak to your provider as well. Also, in order to look for a better score, shop around where financial institutions are concerned. You may have a credit card, you may be involved in a particular loan or automobile loan, well, a mortgage or auto loan, that can get a better rate at another institution, where this is where consolidation comes in, where they do these consolidation loans in an attempt to reduce your amount of trade lines, because that affects your credit report, reduce the amount of individuals inquiring into your credit report, because each inquiry demonstrates that you're shopping for credit. And if you're shopping for credit too often, it gives the reflection that you may not be managing your finances properly, because why are you shopping for credit so often? So that is something that is to be considered as well. Limit the amount of individuals that are looking into your credit reports in order to offer you something. And for those that you're already involved in, if you have 3 or 4 different trade lines, seek if there's a possibility for you to consolidate that, for that to be one payment versus having 6 different payments, where the payments might be late or off, from time to time, which can affect you negatively. In any event, you should go and speak to that individual creditor and to see whether or not they're willing to consolidate it for you, negotiate a new rate of interest, which will reflect very positively on your credit report, and to see whether or not any late payments in the past can be adjusted based on circumstances to which that creditor wasn't aware of.
Thank you. A lot of new information, and I'm sure our viewers will find this very helpful. Where can we contact you, your organization? How can our viewers reach out for help?
Well, they can always call directly, and due to the fact, as I said, this is a digital, space now. By email is always best, because emails are checked on a daily basis, and normally you'll get a response within half an hour. So the email is very important. Our email address is creditdebtb, just the letter B, gone@gmail.com. So creditdebtbgone@gmail.com.
Well, thank you. So, Mr. Michael Diamond, we want to thank you for joining us today and sharing with us on this very critical aspect of credit and repairing and managing.
I want to thank you for having me. And, just a last note is that today is a very important step for individuals to check their credit reports. Because of COVID-19, there have been a lot of financial challenges. And now we should communicate with our creditors earliest as possible to inform them if we're going to have any difficulties in payments. And for certain jurisdictions that the government has allowed for credit bureaus to make certain notations because of COVID-19, we should take advantage of that. So we should not wait until the situation reaches very dire or critical for us to begin to make these adjustments.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Until next time, goodbye from us, your host, Robert Taylor, home and away, Jamaica.
TV, bam bam.